Hey, this is Ryan from the Movie Show, and you're on this live interview on the Movie Show, and we've got someone here that we're going to interview. I know that you guys are going to enjoy, especially for those guys out there that love doing their short film projects. Well, I know that this guy's going to help you out here. So why don't you introduce yourself?
Hey, I'm Connor. I'm Connor Curlewis. I'm a filmmaker from New Zealand. And yeah, thanks for having me on the show.
I know it's a pleasure. In fact, the honor is mine. So. Let me ask you a couple of questions here. So, first of all, I would like to know which directors have inspired you.
I'd probably say, um, Jim Jarmusch. He has like those films which are just like a moment in time. And I love those kinds of things. David Lynch, definitely, because of like, he just inserts like crazy characters, but they're realistic. And probably like Andrei Tarkovsky as well for like just like being really present and meditative and like sacred about the world and the environment.
Okay, okay. I don't. It's look. I'm not very familiar with directors, but are there any like well-known movies that you tell would be able to mention that I would say, oh yes, I know.
Mm. Um, do you know Mulholland Drive?
No, I don't think I've heard of that film before.
That's okay. Stalker?
Stalker. That does sound very familiar.
That's from Tarkovsky. That's pretty awesome.
Okay. All
Uh,
right.
yeah.
All right. Awesome, man. And then another question for you. What was your first film ever worked on? And then this comes with a bit of some follow-up questions here. So, what was the first film that you ever worked on? And then with if you verse that with your latest film that you had worked on, I know that there was something this year that you did, right? 2022. And then out of those two films, right? What's been the biggest lessons you've learned through the experience of the short, the filmmaking?
That's a good question. I've got to remember my first short film now. Well, yeah. It's funny because it's like not a linear like growth. Like I can see an answer there that's just like, oh, in my first short film, I didn't do this and now I'm doing it. But it's more like a back and forth for me. Like I think my first movies were probably like more simple and understandable. And then I went into like a quite a cryptic phase where I was like, nobody's really gonna understand this. But I think it looks cool and I think like it's maybe emotional. I don't know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, there's like different phases. Like my first films were like, just messing around in the garden, playing like spies, good guys versus bad guys.
Ah,
They,
cool.
they, they're like awful, no one should ever see those. Um, but
Mm.
and then I think, but my first real short film was probably like this movie called Amnesia, which we did in high school.
Yes, I
Um,
actually saw.
sorry,
I saw.
oh, you
I,
saw that
I
one.
saw. I saw you did work on it. Yeah, because I was obviously looking for interviews and stuff that you'd work on. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, that was all right. And I don't know. I think the probably like the answer to your question is like you can learn like what you're trying to say in the scripting phase pretty like easily. But then there's also like if you pay enough attention and you're like open enough to change, you can really like learn what your film is trying to say like as you're making it. So
Mm.
there's like a balance between being like, no, this is how it is in my head, and I want it to look like that, or being open to like, events or ideas from other people and being like,
Oh,
oh,
cool.
okay, I could do that. That's a good idea. Like I
Oh,
think
great.
I read this book by Ray Dalio. It's called like Principles, I think. And he just talks about how like in to make a company successful, you have to have like a flat hierarchy. So like it's an idea meritocracy. If anyone in the company, if they're like a janitor or the CEO, if they have an idea, then you should let them you should like hear the idea and do it.
Okay.
A quick example is like my
Mm.
my first advert I ever worked on was just for like a supermarket, and I was just watching the director and the director of photography like shouting at each other, you know, and it was like super weird. And like the one of the gaffers was like, oh, you know, maybe we should like flip the lights around and like save ourselves some time. And the director was like, sorry, are you the DOP? Like, I don't think you like have a right to talk here. And then like the DOP just did that anyway because it was the right idea, but the director was like kind of being, you know, angry. um there's actually a few lessons from that ad, but yeah, I don't know.
Sure. Yeah. That's really great advice. Yeah. Thank you very much for that. Hey.
No worries.
All right. And then another question is one piece of advice you can give to an inspiring filmmaker. I suppose what you had previously said, I don't know if there's anything that you want to add on to that.
I'd probably say like don't fuss over the details. If you're an aspiring filmmaker, you know, maybe you've made one or two films or you want to make your first film,
Mm.
just shoot something. You know, you could make like a pretty sweet movie in a weekend. uh it's just about like giving your attention to each stage of the film fully.
Mm.
Spend 5 hours writing the script and then spend 40 hours shooting and editing it,
Oh,
and
wow.
you'll have like a cool film in a
Mm.
weekend, you know. I would say that like my last short film, the one you mentioned from this year, After Work, that probably took like 2 years to make, and it's 5 minutes long, you
Sure.
know, because I was like, oh, I don't really like this producer, this cinematographer is not very good, or like not what I'm looking for. I mean, I'm glad I waited because the producer and the cinematographer I ended up working with were like amazing for
Mm.
me. But that being said, like the film would probably be quite similar if I just like did it quickly, you know.
Mm.
So yeah,
Mm.
if you're aspiring, you should just get on with it.
Okay. Okay, cool. Thanks, man. And then with you working on short films and that. So first of all, is it like a full-time thing that you do?
Oh no, definitely not. No, no.
Okay.
It's like
So, so, so
there you go.
tell me about how you do the filmmaking, and obviously you do your job or your work, you know, the income bringer.
Yeah, it's just like, you know, I saved up. You know, I just would save up like a couple of grand to pay people and like the locations.
Mm.
And you know, I'm not doing this like very often. Like it is expensive to bring on like 15 people to just do what you want them to do. So the balance is kind of just like if there's an idea and I really want to do it, then I'll save up and I'll eventually I the last film I did, I didn't really even have enough money to make it. Like I just paid people afterwards. I was like, okay, well, I can't really pay the makeup person. I'll pay them in a month or two. Same, you
Wow.
know. So you have to be like, hey guys, like I'm doing this all myself. The other thing is that you could probably go for a grant, but all the grants I tried for, I got rejected. So I don't have any tips for that. But yeah, I guess just save up some money and try and just be real cheap. Borrow
Oh.
stuff. Try and be really nice to people and let them use like the location or something.
Mm. Wow, sure. And with your time, with like work that you do, because I take it obviously you work during working hours, right? So
Yeah, yeah.
shooting hours?
Well, yeah, this last short film we did it in 3 different days.
Mm.
Um, oh yeah, so the first shoot day was like Monday night, and then Tuesday morning, and I just called a sickie on Tuesday morning, and then we had like a pickup day. I can't remember which day it was. It might have been the weekend. So I really didn't take much time off work, and I just like picked up the hours later. Um,
Wow.
it's just about organizing, I guess, like
Mm.
um, trying to do it when, I mean, the reason we did it after work is because everybody else works a job during the day. So we were
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
let's just start
Mm.
at 6 p.m. and pretend that it's the morning, you know?
Yeah.
So
Oh, cool, crazy. So yeah,
have you,
working around working around the working hours, huh?
yeah, yeah. I mean, has to be done.
I suppose if you're passionate and you really want to get, the idea in your head, the story across, then I guess it makes it worth it, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually heard there's a book that I'm reading, and it was quite interesting. The guy basically said this. He said the mind creates energy for the body. If you've got an idea, it's actually quite amazing how doesn't matter how tired you are, how much energy you can have for something that you're passionate about. So yeah, no, definitely. Tell me, your next question, what's the big picture? So what is your ultimate goal? Like, what are you heading towards?
Ultimate goal is to build a community and like share and support people for sure. Uh, I was just talking about this with a friend last night, so I have a fresh idea. I think, like we're all on this planet, we're just flying through space. Like we should support each other, and like I'm lucky enough to be able to like help a few people out
Mm,
and make something at the same time, like make something creative. If I can make a few more films before I die, and
mm.
people have fun while they make them, and
Yeah.
yeah, getting people together to make a film is awesome, and I think that's what the ultimate goal is to just kind of keep doing it, I guess.
Mm,
So yeah.
mm. I'm sure at the end of those films, it's quite rewarding, getting together and then being like, check, guys, look at what we made. Hey?
Yeah, totally. It's kind of amazing. It's very fleeting. You have to be mindful that like you're at a peak and it's just going to disappear within a few seconds. But
Yeah.
there is a little moment where you're like, shit, that was pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah. No, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, cool, man. And then another question, what is the biggest challenge you faced when it comes to making a film? Like, what is the biggest challenge you had?
Mm, I mean, probably like it's cliche, but like COVID. Uh,
Yes.
I was going to make this movie in Scotland like 3 years ago, and then I had to come back to New Zealand. My landlord actually was kind of like really supportive, and she was just like, this is going to be a big pandemic. Like, you should go spend some time with your family. So I moved out of the UK and went back to New Zealand. And actually, the producer I was working with at the time, he was like, you can't be creative, if you haven't got your job and your flat sorted and like just getting the bills like sorted. Like I think the biggest obstacle to making films for many years for me was just like not really having the basics sorted.
Mm.
But once you're like somewhat secure in a job, like I know that I can always be a bartender. So I'm sorted in that realm. If I went to
Oh,
Johannesburg, I would probably walk into a bar and be like, I need some money. Let's do it.
oh, yeah, cool, man.
But before you have that sorted, that's probably the biggest
Mm,
obstacle.
mm,
Yeah.
mm. That's crazy. Like especially this year, I've heard of a lot of filmmakers, maybe even in like the sort of production CG, 3D, those type of guys. And a lot of them have stories whereby they like moved out their house, they bought a one plane ticket to this country, they went there, and if it means they slept in the car, they slept in the car. And a lot of them, they have some lucky stories where they're now living there, they've made it, they got an apartment. So yeah, definitely basics, it's quite a challenge to follow what you love and keep the basics.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, totally.
it's quite crazy. This other question I was going to ask you now. So your thoughts about the movie making scene. Now I'm talking about the
Mm.
whole movie business
Yeah.
um, post pandemic. What are your thoughts? Because I mean, like movie houses are closed. Well, they're open, but it's like, okay, here in South Africa, the cinemas have never filled up as what they used to. I don't know about that side, but like, and especially now, I don't know if you've seen, well, I'm sure you've noticed, but um, a lot of the movies they're making films. So films have been made, and a lot of them they're selling off to Netflix, or they're selling off to, it's not that they don't make as much money as they used to, in the box office anymore. So what are your thoughts, movie, now the whole movie biz post pandemic?
Yeah. I mean, it's probably like the democratization of films. which is kind of what happened to music.
Mm.
I think that we might be in like a trough or a peak of like people appreciating and valuing art. We're probably
Mm.
in like the bottom right now where people are kind of like, because it's like so easy to make something like you like my DSLR, you could like use that for a Netflix film because you know
Yeah.
4K 24p, you can shoot like S-Log and
Yeah.
grade it and it'll look great. You know, it's like a $2,000 camera.
Mm.
You know, 30 years ago, that was like, I mean, even when I started filmmaking like 15 years ago, it was like all the shoots that I went on were RE. Everything's, you know, no way you could ever, I can't afford that. Like, no one's going to afford that unless you like have a
Yeah.
studio.
Right.
So I feel like because it's like democratized the technology, we're gonna also like devalue the product. So yeah, like you were saying, like it just being sold and not really making much revenue.
Mm.
Maybe that's a great thing. Like more stories will be told. I know that in the past it was a very privileged position to be a filmmaker. Like the stories that were told were like, you know, mainstream ideas. Now we can have anybody like in a slum or like
That's
ghetto
true.
just tell a story and be like, yeah, I shot it on my, you know, Samsung phone, it's
Yeah.
1080p.
Yeah.
So that's good. But
Mm.
um I don't know. It's different everywhere. Like my brother's back in New Zealand and he's just got so much film work right now. Because New Zealand has kind of handled COVID well. I don't know about South Africa. I don't know about like the rest of the media places.
Ah,
See what happens.
yeah. Yeah. No. No. Definitely. Oh no. Well. Um. Yeah. Great. Great answer, Ned. So. Yeah. I guess that pretty much wraps up my question.
Okay.
Let me ask you just a few things off my head here quickly.
Yeah, please do. I've got time. This is fun.
Um, favorite film. What's your favorite ultimate film of all time?
Okay. Okay, so there's two answers to this question, or there's two ways of asking this question.
Mm.
So I want to hear what you have to say. So the favorite film is either like the film that you can sit down and watch 100 times and it'd be
Yeah.
great every time,
Ah.
or the favorite film is like I watched it once or twice and it like made me feel something.
Mm.
So
Mm.
so
Mm.
the first answer to that is actually probably this movie called Human Traffic, which is a
Yes, I've heard of that. Eh?
you heard of that one?
Mm.
Yeah, yeah.
Definitely.
Amazing movie.
Mm.
It's about like rave culture in Wales in the 90s. And it's just like one of those movies that's like really quotable. All the characters are like really authentic. They're all quite distinct. Um, and it's just funny as hell. You know, the first time I watched it was with this bartender I knew, and he slept over at my house, and we like watched it in the morning. And then as soon as we finished it, he was like, "Do you want to watch it again?" And
Oh,
I'd never done that with a movie, but I was like, "Yeah, like let's do it again." And
sure.
you know, that kind of stays in my mind of something I can show that to anybody and be like, "This is an authentic piece of culture that
Mm.
will make you laugh and make you think."
Mm.
But my second answer is probably like uh Mulholland Drive or Eight and a Half by
Mm.
Federico Fellini.
Oh.
Because when I watched those films, I was like, you know, it felt kind of like psychedelic or spiritual. It felt very like, holy shit, this is a transcending kind of moment. Eight and a Half is like so genius. It's about a filmmaker making a movie and just like everybody trying to get involved and like give him an idea and like trying to like you know talk their way into like making it, and then he's kind of like, no, I'm the guy who's doing it, just leave me alone. And
Oh, wow.
it's like, but it's also like a dream, and you
Uh,
don't really know if it's actually a dream, so it's like it gets very surreal and like weird.
mm.
I love that because it's very blurry as to like what's really happening. So yeah, Eight and a Half, Federico Fellini, highly
Oh,
recommend that.
wow. Yeah, I'm looking at it. Yeah, it's quite an old film, right?
Yeah, like 67 maybe.
That's right. That's right. 63.
63.
Okay. Listen, it sounds like you can actually give me quite a good list of movies to watch because, the thing is, what I'm picking up from you is that I don't know if you're into like the mainstream, there's the mainstream movies, the movies that everybody's talking about. And then there's the films, which I'm hearing from you are the films they're not very well known about, but they're very good. They're great stories, right?
Yeah, oh, definitely. I think
Hmm.
that hopefully they're better. I'm not sure if they are. Yeah,
Well,
they are great.
well, if you wouldn't mind typing me out like your top three list, eh?
Yeah, I'll do that. I'll send it over.
I'm willing to watch. Question. So, how much of a fan of Christopher Nolan are you?
Big fan.
Is
Yep.
it? So, what was
Um,
about Tenant?
yeah, I watched it twice and it was I think the thing that's wrong with that movie is they do kind of like the movie jargon tech
Yeah.
language where they're like the alpha waves are like coming in. Let me explain physics to you.
Mm,
And that's kind of like a plot device to be like, we don't really know what's going on, and we're gonna kind of like he didn't do that in Interstellar. In Interstellar, it was like, this is the theory, and we're gonna try and explain it to you.
mm,
Whereas with Tenant, it was a bit more like, is that real, or are you just sort of saying words?
mm,
I
mm.
did love the kind of pacing where it was just like bam, 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 like let's keep it interesting.
Yeah.
It felt like what James Bond should have been, like
Oh,
more,
really? Yeah.
like it's like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
relatable young people doing kind of new things. I love it. Nolan's always like practical effects too, so it like feels
Yeah.
cool, feels very cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think I'm not gonna like Memento and the Prestige and like the Dark Knight. They're like way better in my opinion. But
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
just the way it is.
Okay. So,
You're a Nolan fan?
yeah. Well, it's weird. We on our podcast, we had a bit of a time when we sort of looked at a couple of his movies. The only thing, Tenant. So I actually had a challenge of I challenged myself. I said I'm going to watch the movie 10 times, 2.5 hour film. I think I
No.
watched it 7 times, and it's crazy because you said that every time you watch a film, and I know that Christopher Nolan has a thing that he does where every time you watch the film, it's a different experience. Now, every time you watch Tenant, you pick up different things that it's a completely different experience. So that's where I came with that question about Christopher Nolan, because I know he's quite and yes, um, that film with Leonardo DiCaprio, what was it with the
Inception?
Inception? So that was one of my most favorite films with him from him. Yeah, because it was crazy. It really, really was crazy. Okay, cool. Well, our time's up here with the interview. It's really, really was awesome interviewing you.
Oh,
You only
thanks.
you
I
only
owe you
list
the list.
that I really want to watch. So I believe you do have that email that you're in contact with us with, right?
Yeah, totally. I'll send it
All
to you.
right, cool. And if any of our watchers want to if they're interested in that list of film, well, you can just comment below, and yes, we'll definitely get in touch with you. Well, it really was awesome again interviewing you, and yeah, I look forward to seeing any future films from you, any short films and that from you. And thank you for your time that you spent just answering some of our questions. I know that you would have helped a lot of other short filmmakers as well.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me. It was really great. Um, if anybody wants to see those films we talked about, you can go to straypath.org and yeah, I'll give you my favorite films.
There it
Um,
is.
and yeah, thanks so much for your time. That was really fun.
All right. If there's anybody that wants to sort of keep an eye on any films in it that you're making up, you got a YouTube channel or anything like that where you post your stuff?
Yeah, I do have a YouTube channel, but I like know that the algorithm, wants you to be a certain way. So it's got like 50 subscribers and they're all unlisted really. But yeah, straypath.org, that's where all the good things are,
All right.
I
There it
think.
is. There it is. All
Yeah.
right. Well, thank you very much for your time.
Hey,
And
all good.
we'll chat again sometime in the future, sometime soon.
Yeah, I'd love that. Yeah.